If you would like, you can sit forward and...
Maybe you stand, Vladimir. That would be better.
Yeah, I'm sorry for being late tonight. We finished a little bit before 9, and by the time I dragged this stuff here. Actually, we have a Bulgarian proverb that says every bad is for good. By not giving me a workshop tonight, this is the first workshop that I'm organizing on my own. And I'm thinking, how have I been so dumb as not to organize these up to now? I would sit on a panel with party liners, given 5 minutes or 10 minutes, to lay down a picture that would take several of these workshops at 10 hours each to basically rewrite the whole view of our reality, the whole view of our planet. So I'm extremely glad that we are all here tonight, and from now on this would be the pattern. So I'm glad to present the first underground panel that has as its purpose to delineate between the party line, the government line, and the dissident line in American ufology and in conspiratorial ufology. As a dissident from Eastern Europe, as a political emigre from Bulgaria, this is the way I see the political reality in the universe from the conspiratorial perspective. Also, through the lectures that I've been giving at the local community center in Santa Monica, through the Graduate School of Ufology, we will be entering the second year this fall, and more the topics become more and more sophisticated. So from introductory ufology, ET 101, we will be moving to ufology 201, or conspiratorial ufology, this fall. I'll be very glad to see any one of you guys there. The mailer that I'm sending regularly every month has information also about the upcoming meeting. This month, only this month, it will be in Friday before the last Saturday of the month, because I'll be going to Phoenix next weekend.
Can you relate to the audience here, because not everybody has seen your pictures, how this ties to Operation Paperclip?
Yeah, with pleasure. Well, this is the reason for this workshop and seminar tonight. The party line and the dissident line, these are just two small glimpses of the present-day reality. I would like for all of us here in the panel and the audience, through your questions, to try to approach, if possible, the bigger picture, the bigger conspiratorial picture of our planet and the local part of the galaxy, the local universe that we are in. Because this is what is important. This is what would help us explain why so many things are seemingly the same. Why the 5-point star is on the Russian flag, on the Chinese flag, on the American flag, on the Pentagon building and the American Capitol's floor plan. Or why the boys from Brazil are abducted at a young age and separated from their parents and educated devoid of any parental emotion and affection, turning them into obedient robotons serving the secret government. The Turkish Empire ruled my country for 5 centuries. The Turks were abducting children at age 3, 4, 5. This was called the blood tax, and they were taking them in their elite cavalry schools, the famous Yanichers, the crack Turkish battalions, using the same techniques. It's nothing new under the sun. The Russians were sending the street urchins into the Suvorov schools that were later turning them into the crack troops of the KGB and the military intelligence, the GRU. These are people that are killers. They have absolutely no emotions. In a Suvorov school where there would be killings and beatings and rapings and beautifully described by, actually the name is the same, namesake Viktor Suvorov in his books on the secret Russian military intelligence, the GRU. He has about a dozen books that have been very hush-hush, not advertised here in this country. Although he started publishing them in '84 when Dayton was still not strong. This is how kids were educated there. Why there's a photograph of a Hitler-Jugend guy with a kerchief here, and all the medals and epaulets and everything looks so familiar with a photograph of a Russian pioneer that is so familiar to a Boy Scout. Isn't there an invisible hand behind these events that is the reason for these similarities? Genetic experiments are a very important field of research. This is the toughest nut to crack for any scientific civilization. Transportation, as you see, has been solved long time ago through the anti-gravity source of travel. Any race, I mean, there are billions of races that use anti-gravity for propulsion. Communications have also been solved through the superluminal gravity wave communications that travel many times faster than the speed of light. According to our here, the government has communications with the speed of light squared, cubed, on the 4th power, 5th, 6th, 7th power, which would give the government a no delay, real-time phone line as if we were talking with another district in Los Angeles, with any point in our galaxy. The light would take 150,000 years to cross the galaxy. No, just a second. I would like here to take some of the books. Wendell Stevens has done an incredible service to the world ufology by publishing this collection of about 20 books, brilliantly researched, contacted books of extraterrestrial races that are visiting our planet. Most of these races are modules in the flesh, biological material bodies that reproduce sexually, most of them. Very few of these are spirit or come in, we can just put them here. Very few of them come in energy spirit bodies, which is the next level of evolution and advancement in the universe. Which means that although thousands of years ahead of us, still they are the same primary schoolers as we are in the universe. We cannot even imagine how much do we have to climb and learn in the universe till we go to university, to graduate school, to postdocs. So, as precious as all these revelations are, this is like talking to the privates of an extraterrestrial army. It would be more important to talk to the officer corps, if possible to the general staff, in order for one to understand the purpose of this whole hierarchical structure in the universe. I've seldom heard mentioned, I've never heard mentioned in American or world ufology, major revelatory sources of different nature that are extremely important to understand how the universe works. It is not that a certain author is a giant, but simply that he was smart enough to climb on shoulders of giants. I mean, these are gigantic revelations that we have here. For example, one of them, the Billy Meyer stuff that I have here, a whole pile of 6,500 pages of contactee notes by Billy Meyer. These are just 2,000 of them, a third of his contact notes. This is a brilliant revelation from a reincarnational race that believes in reincarnation. This is a revelation from Hochdeutsch German, poorly translated into English, and Wendell Stevens has polished up the first 4 volumes in the message from the Pleiades, parts 1 and 2. As advanced as the Pleiadians are, they are still primary schoolers in the universe as we are. They are just in the 5th grade of the primary school. We're in the 2nd grade, a little bit ahead of us. This book here, the WASPI book, claims to be the revelation of the Jehovian universe, centered around the Earth, of numerous fine energy, higher vibrational planes of existence around the planet Earth. Basically, this is the spirit universe. All the tabloid paranormal stories of spirits visiting us, ghosts, possessions, evil spirits, satanic, demonic possessions, are explained in great detail. This is probably the best introduction into the spirit universe, and comes from a source many levels higher in evolution than these contactee books. Another interesting book that I've discovered by chance is the Urantia book, which itself claims to be the revelation to the planet by the Trinity universe, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. At the beginning, as a naive comparative revelatologist, I quickly realized that there are vast discrepancies in the views of the universe. And I started to thinking, well, Billy Meyer's lying. No, the Urantia book is not true. Or maybe these guys are wrong. And then little by little, and after many years of slowly laying the information down in the pickle, I realized that actually one doesn't have to discard things that don't match. You don't have to discard this or this or this fact, that simply little by little these partial revelations start to come together. And so you can match this and this in this way without discarding any one element. Then you can match these two from a different plan, then these two, and so on. I mean, there are hundreds of other revelations on the planet. There is no upper limit to the universe as we know it. As important as the Trinity universe is for our planet, I've been a little bit puzzled to realize that actually this may be the story of our local galactic cluster, about a dozen galaxies. This is the domain of the Trinity hierarchy according to the Urantia book. I'm reading between the lines very hard because these are kind of the things that belong to the omitted things. If this is the case, then maybe in the universe as we know it, that consists of 150 billion galaxies that our primitive astronomy claims to have discovered, are many other hierarchies of the level of the Urantia hierarchy. Then Billy Meyer, through his contacts, the Pleiadians, through their tutors that come from a neighboring universe, they learned that actually our huge universe is just one egg in a bigger basket. Their tutors come from the next door neighbor egg, the Tau universe, the Timor rays from the Tau universe. And exactly where the two eggs touch, they can open a vortex hole and cross with their ship and come and visit us. Any other eggs? Yeah, they say 1 to the 49th power, 1 with 49 zeros of eggs in a bigger basket. So maybe in these, each one of these universes has its creator. These universes, according to some metaphysical sources, appear through budding out of the neighboring universe. A mother universe would create a daughter universe, and so on. I mean, the universe is immensely more complex than we can even imagine. We cannot even imagine how complex it is. That's why it's very funny and comical for me when someone in ufology starts claiming that I have discovered the ultimate truth. The 12th planet, the guys from that planet came to Earth, they genetically engineered us, they created Jesus, they created everything on the planet. By the way, the creation of Jesus is something that is a recurring story in many UFO contactee books. Obviously, the aliens have realized that this was an important character in our history. Maybe some of them were working as subcontractors in that whole event, as it usually happens in the universe. Celestial races, celestial beings, lower levels of celestial beings, then material extraterrestrial beings and so on work in these multiple pyramid hierarchical levels of contractors, subcontractors and so on, until they come to the smaller planet. So in this bigger picture, I mean, I do believe that thousands of races visit our planet each year. Billy Meyer claims there are 3,000 races that visit us each year. Since the time of Jesus, there have been 6 million races to come to our planet. Any race that claims that they genetically engineered us, maybe they don't know our history too well. We've been engineered by dozens, if not thousands, of other races. That's probably how things work in the universe. And I'm about done. So, in this bigger picture, how would we tie up the genetic experiment, the underground facilities, and the secret government? One of the best renditions of a very major event that happened in our local universe I found for myself in the Urantia book. There are 3 papers on the Lucifer rebellion that happened 250,000 years ago, when a group of celestial beings decided to take a different philosophical religious approach, decided to view the universe from a different perspective. The Lucifer Manifesto is published here. After reading several thousand pages of Billy Meyer's contactee, several hundred pages of his journals, and the detailed philosophical view that they have about the universe, I realized that despite the fact that they are tremendously morally and socially and ethically advanced, and that they would never give technology to us and to our government, first of all, the Pleiadians still have a philosophy that basically comes verbatim from the Luciferian manifesto, philosophy-wise, that they view the universe in the same viewpoint as the group that took the side of Lucifer in that rebellion. I've noticed that anyone who starts talking about Lucifer is labeled a hardline religionist or a fundamentalist religionist, and is very easily discarded, simply because these levels of complexity that are at the level of these celestial hierarchies are way more higher than the levels of complexity of, let's say, this Ayarga race that travel in ships that are riveted together. They don't even have the hyperdrive, the superluminal warp speeds that even our government, secret government, has. So the Lucifer rebellion was an extremely important event on our planet, because this is the watershed point where the Trinity hierarchy and the Lucifer hierarchy have been ever since in a little arm wrestling, arm twisting, as to who would better rule our planet. On top of that, it turns out that we are not just any planet. The Urantia book claims that our planet Earth was the planet of the last and final, how should I call it, graduation thesis of the first party boss of the local universe, Michael of Nebadon. Nebadon is the name of the local universe according to the Urantia book. It has 10 million inhabited planets approximately, and it's ruled by Michael, Archangel Michael, or the guy that was Jesus Christ in his incarnation on the planet. Each of these first party secretaries in each of these local universes, and there are 10,000 of them in our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy, they have to go through such 7 incarnations as teacher sons, paradise teacher sons, on planets, worlds of their choice, on any level of existence, material body, semi-material, spiritual body, and so on. And they have a list of the other incarnations that Christ went through. But the last and final incarnation happened to be on this planet. And after the 7th incarnation, it's very important for the local universe, because after the 7th incarnation, the local universe becomes autonomous and independent from Moscow, and the paradise proconsuls, imperial proconsuls, are downgraded to ambassadors. So basically, the local universe won its independence with the completion of the incarnation of the first party boss. So the planet where the local boss did his graduation thesis, obviously, is the most important planet in the local universe. If you can prove on this planet that you can do a better show than he does, then you have the whole local universe in your small pocket. So my feeling is that there has, ever since this Luciferian Liberian 250,000 years ago, there has been this arm twisting and tug of war between these celestial hierarchies as to who would create faster and in a better way a more efficient society. And there have been a long list of skeletons in our history. Atlantis, Lemuria. Here there is another civilization, the continent of Pan, another civilization in the Pacific that may be even different from Lemuria. A long list of civilizations that were created primarily through contact with extraterrestrial races. The Pleiadians landed on the planet 180,000 years ago, 70,000 years after the Luciferian Liberian. Way more advanced than we are. Still, they share the philosophical outlook of the universe as our, Luciferian hierarchy. 90% of the UFOs visiting the Earth they do not believe in the Trinity. They share the view that the universe is a creation, that there is no universal father with a personality, a centralized being with intellect somewhere residing on the Isle of Paradise, as the Urantia book says, but that the universe is a clockwork, a black box clockwork with its laws, very complex laws, but it has no personality, ergo you cannot sit on a couch and crack jokes with the creation, or you cannot use the creation as your teacher, which is very important. Only one of these contactee books, UFO the Four, is a race of supermaterial, half energy, half material bodies that believe in the Trinity. It's very interesting. My feeling is that maybe about 10% of the races on our planet believe in the Trinity. Another funny thing about the Trinitarian universe is that they do not have transportation through saucers. They do not have telepathic communications through superluminal frequencies. And in many ways, they are less advanced than the hardware developed by the Luciferian hierarchies on our planet. Transportation-wise and communication-wise, the Luciferian empire has outdone the Trinitarian one. However, the toughest nut to crack is the genetics. The toughest nut. The Pleiadians did genetic experiments 280,000 years ago. The very first volume of Billy Meyer Chronicles, they put this piece of information in the beginning because it's important. The very first volume of the Billy Meyer Chronicles talks about them mating against the will of the upper levels, of the upper floors, with the daughters of men. Later they couldn't withstand the next urge, the next scratch, and they started fusing humans with animals. Anything that walked probably was fused with the humans, thinking that they would create a better race. They ended up screwing the genetic code so much that they had to, a flood was engineered on the planet by high intelligences to wipe the blackboard clean and start anew, as were the floods that downed the continent of Pan, according to the revelation from the Jehovian universe, as was a flood that happened that ruined Atlantis, according to, again, the Billy Meyer revelations. There have been many floods that ruined Atlantis. The last one was a war between the Earth, Mars, and the planet between Mars and Jupiter, Milona, Maldek, Milana, that was destroyed and gave the beginning of the asteroid belt, according to the Pleiadian revelation. So we see a long list of skeletons of dead civilizations, of unsuccessful attempts by the Luciferian hierarchy to outperform the Trinity into a faster moving new type of civilization. Another interesting comparison, I mean, the Pleiadians spent 120 million years hopping between stars. But they haven't had wars only for the last 50,000 years. Basically, it's a millisecond compared to the time they have spent flying between stars and feuding and waging wars and killing continents and planets and suns with whole solar systems, as was the Eye of God, the Lyra, the wars in the Lyra constellation more than 200,000 years ago that they had. So usually a planet that follows the Trinity prescription goes from the Adamic insemination, from the Adamic genetic upbringing, to the final stages when they are settled in light and life. This is probably an advanced civilization that's probably semi-material, semi-spiritual, in about 1 million years. The Pleiadians have been bar hopping, planet hopping for 120 million years, learning very little, simply because their philosophy is such. There is no universal father. The universe is a creation that has no personality, ergo it cannot teach you. And I mean, I'm not selling you for Soviet power and for joining the kolkhozes, as the joke in Russia says. I'm not selling you any philosophy. I'm just basically reiterating aloud this process of search that I've gone through, comparing these different revelatory sources and trying to figure out for myself which is a better and faster educational system that I would like to enroll my soul when I graduate from here.
Let me ask you a question. Getting into some hard evidence, we came across a picture of John Lyric giving me this.
Anthony, just a second. I'm about done. So basically, again and again and again, coming to genetics, this is the hardest nut to crack. The Pleiadians did it. Many of the other aliens that are revealed here did it. A lot of these civilizations had to be wiped out. The Germans did genetic experiments according to the story of a leading ufologist who did a major UFO documentary in the 70s. And he's trying to get this film released, a film about walking, breeding, living hybrids between humans and animals that the Germans did in the concentration camps. If the Germans had these things 50 years ago, the Russians are doing genetic experiments in the Wrangel Island concentration camps above the North Arctic Circle. All these films that we see about crazy scientists in faraway places with shady financiers that are doing Frankensteinian stuff, this is not science fiction in my opinion. This is the signature of the Illuminati. This is how the Illuminati finance these secret projects. Now they have the underground labs, so they don't have to go all the way to Brazil to educate the kids. They just take them downstairs, underground, and do whatever they want. So basically this is about genetic engineering. I think this is the main avenue, the main direction of scientific research and development, trust, of effort of the Luciferian and the Illuminati secret government hierarchy on our planet. How do they finance these things? Pentagon money, maybe 10% of a $1 billion for a Trident submarine goes for the submarine. The rest is just siphoned off to other secret projects. I mean, these are bank accounts. Trident submarine, the B-1 bomber. If the Germans had these flying saucers 50 years ago, and the Americans and the Russians have had them, obviously all these military projects are just a welfare system for the military and for the thousands of engineers that create projects. I mean, remember this Golden Fleece Award about the toilet seat that was, how much, $500 or whatever? Maybe this is a toilet seat not for a bomber. It would be, some of them would be used for the bomber, but once developed, they will be used for flying saucers. I mean, the life support system of a nuclear submarine goes intact into a nuclear-driven saucer. The Rockefeller Foundation supposedly gave a present to the government, the nuclear-powered saucers that take part in the Star Trek scenario, the Star Trek exploration of our solar system and beyond. And as a token of gratitude, the moon base was given the name the Rockefeller base. The money comes from, all of these projects are bank accounts. The real hardware costs a lot less than the money that is paid for it. Number two, the black projects this is already money that only several people from Congress know exactly what it is spent on, but these are the small peanuts. The biggest money comes from, the drug money. This is a perfect way of getting a white powder that costs probably normally, if the drugs are legalized, this powder should cost not much more than the common flour produced with the cheap labor of the third world. But artificially creating the necessary political situation, they probably got the idea from the dry period here, from the prohibition, that you can make tremendous amounts of fast money by prohibiting a given substance. But even this is not the chief source of money. Actually, if you calculate it on street values, a Trident submarine will be worth several 18-wheelers of cocaine. Can you buy a Trident submarine with flour? You can't. Whoever invented the whole narcotics subculture was really a genius. This is a money-making machine. You plant some areas in the third world, use cheap labor, get some chemicals from here, and you end up with something that's worth as much as gold. Still, I think the biggest money comes from the printing press. The funny money. You turn that crank once, and from paper and ink that costs very little, you make gold. Because I've been trying to figure out for myself, how the hell do the Illuminati finance these projects? What our Bielek is talking about, the things that I haven't covered about secret space flights and so on, these are projects that literally cost thousands of billions of dollars, that cost thousands of, maybe trillions of dollars over the years. Obviously, most of the funding comes from the printing press. The Germany was able in 7 short years to create miracles, to create full employment of everybody, because of a very simple reason. The printing press was removed from the hands of the bankers and given in the hands of the Nazi party, ergo the government. So all the proceeds from this creation of gold, from paper and ink, were plowed back into the economy and in the war industry and into highways and so on. So basically, these were my comments.
I like his work. It's well, he covers it very nice. The Atlantic, Memoria, the cloning, how human sacrifices started. Return, it covers the whole chapter on chemistry, the whole chapter on magnetics. And it belongs to me. The next one is that during the time of San Lemuria in Atlantis, there was a super civilization that is not talked about much in the Amazon region. Very superior. The other thing you mentioned, Maladak or Murdoch, how I would say it was also called Lucifer. There was a great war that went on between that planet and the Pleiades. They were experimenting with nuclear energy such as we haven't even dreamed of today. They were given the opportunity to stop this, or this would happen, or certain things would happen to them. They chose to go on. In the scripture it says, two shall be standing, one shall be sitting. It doesn't necessarily apply to the earth. My theory is it applies to the Maladex. They refused to obey what was said. So they were taken out. But first of all the good ones were removed. Those who wanted to play their silly games as we have today, they left them. So what did they do? They annihilated themselves. This will never be allowed to happen again. The asteroid belt, which caused the moons to put around Mars, it will never happen again. They made a mistake. And I'm sure you know about this. With the
Pleiades race of people, which is said to be mainly made up of women, they didn't think this would happen. And anytime you set off an atomic bomb, hydrogen bomb, I don't care what it is, it not only affects us, but it affects other dimensions, other entities that we know nothing about that coexist with us, that are able, and possibly certain members of those energy fields can actually come into our dimension and run us the way they want. So we may think we're got control of everything, but no. And it has been said that some of these entities live off of the dead and around reservoirs. And I just wanted to bring that up.
We can barely scratch not 1%, but a millionth of a percent here. There's so many brilliant books and revelations. Nobody can read them all. The truth is everywhere, in every language, in every culture, one would find revelations from different sources that would basically give a full set of the picture of the world around us. Search and you shall find. It's out there in every culture and every language. I remember Al talking about how much the military controls the nuclear weapons and how much do they understand from the nukes. And probably it's a nice time to give a little outline here of what happened with the hydrogen bombs exploding.
Yes, that little bit.
Yeah.
As you may know, the history of the development of the atomic weapons began in the United States in 1943 at Los Alamos and went through, of course, the development of the atomic bomb, and later on Dr. Teller developed the hydrogen bomb. The first hydrogen bomb was tested in 1952 in Eniwetok. There was a second test in 1954. The 54 test, as I remember, was one in which they instrumented very carefully and very thoroughly the device put on an island, and they ran 3-mile-long tunnels with instrumentation in order to photograph at the end with some very exotic timing techniques and control mechanisms, all built by EG&G, because EG&G from the beginning and to this day is the only contractor to the AEC or NRC for instrumentation of any type of atomic weaponry or atomic developments, or for that matter, certain other areas. So they had the test at time 0, t = 0. They, of course, push the button. The first device that goes off, of course, is the atomic trigger mechanism, which then triggers the hydrogen bomb, which is a hydrogen mechanism which has to be triggered by exceedingly high temperatures, about 100 million degrees Fahrenheit. They wanted to measure the propagation rate of that explosion down the tunnel. They weren't able to, because t = 0, they found, was everywhere, as there was no propagation rate. It was instantaneous to the end of the tunnels. They vaporized, and suddenly the hydrogen wore actual mushroom cloud, if you will, of the hydrogen bomb was instantaneously full-blown and remained there for a period of time. And as it started to dissipate, Life magazine got a hold of some of the photographs which the military and AEC had made, and they showed that they were looking into another universe. You could see stars through those photos, and this was published openly by Life magazine in those days. Needless to say, Life magazine had their wrist slapped rather hard. Nobody figured out quite how they got a hold of the photographs. But they... I'm sorry? Back in 1954, I do not remember the specific issue. I do not have a copy of that in my files. I wish I had. But they found that the physicists didn't really understand the nature of time. They didn't understand the nature of what they were dealing with. That time is not an absolute function that is compressible. The Russians in the 60s did their own experiments to find that time has an average value, which we measure with a clock, but it is definitely alterable from t = 0 in terms of time flow slows down to virtual zero, or it can become infinity, which is to say that there is no propagation time from point A to point B of what we call the measurement, i.e. the speed of light propagation. The propagation rate of the speed of light is not a constant. Einstein never said it was, and there's been many experiments done since to show that it is a variable. It is only an apparent constant on planet Earth under normal measurements and conditions of measurement. So we have here a conundrum, a problem. How come the hydrogen bomb explosion expanded instantaneously? We still don't know that answer. I don't think the physicists know that answer to this day. It's very much like what happened with the Philadelphia experiment locking up with the Phoenix Project. They still don't really know what happened in terms of the problems generated when they ripped this hole in space-time 40 years wide and created another problem because they knew, at least von Neumann knew, and a few people knew, that time is not the evasive little something, a wiggle in the ether. It is a wave, and it also has both a forward and reverse function. And because of the abruptness of this tearing of the fabric of space-time, a reverse time wave is created, which, if it had intersected the forward time wave in the year 1963, would have resulted in the disruption of the entire North American continent, vast amounts of matter being spewed out into space, and the entire North American continent, other than the mountain ranges, would have been underwater in 1963. And we would have been back in the equivalent of the Ice Age in terms of civilization, the Stone Age at best. This was prevented. I do not go into this normally in my lectures on the Philadelphia experiment because it's a long, drawn-out story. But von Neumann was warned that there was a problem. He realized it, and he went traveling around through time. He had his own time machine. He found other people and recruits, two scientists out of the future from beyond the year 2003, as well as another man in the future from 1963. He had the full cooperation of President Reagan. The matter of time becomes a total illusion in terms of the way he was moving around and bringing people and hardware together to provide a damper in the year 1963 to prevent the reverse time wave from being of any consequence. We're here talking about it. Obviously, the project was successful, and the project was disbanded immediately after the need for it was over. This is just one small aspect. I know all of the people involved that were involved in this whole thing, and I've had some private conversations which I am not at liberty to disclose, but the gist of it goes that the people then, even von Neumann himself, did not fully understand the problem. One of his staff physicists understood it better than he did, and the people out of the future understood it. They were dealing with the problems of holonomic topologies, if I may use that terminology, which says that if you poke a hole in space-time here, you don't know where else in the universe you're going to poke another hole in space-time and disrupt another universe, and that's exactly what they were doing. Those who were from the future stated that the mess they created was perhaps the worst in the history of the universe in terms of disruption. There was a project, or a lockup, two projects, which created a problem, the like of which has never been seen before and hopefully will never be seen again. But this is only one aspect of the problems involved with physics, with atomic weaponry, and of course with playing around with time. This issue of time was a side issue in terms of the hydrogen bomb. It was a main issue in terms of the Philadelphia Phoenix projects. Yes, you have a question. There was a movie entitled The Final Countdown that dealt with the carrier Nimitz and a fictionalized but actually more real than fiction plot involving going backwards in time and attempting to change history. Now, as a matter of fact, all of the hardware involved in the Philadelphia experiment, while abandoned in 43, was resurrected in 47. The problems were found, the answers were found, and the whole system was made operational without the side effects in 1953. And of course, after several generations and changes and improvements in hardware, these systems were installed on all of the super carriers, the Nimitz being the first. And it was not only the capability for invisibility, it was also the capability for traveling in time. To the best of my knowledge, the Nimitz was actually involved in the true experiment of going backwards in time, and they were attempting to change history. The orders to the captain were to go back to the day before Pearl Harbor, destroy the Japanese fleet and the air fleet, and prevent Pearl Harbor from happening. Well, they had the capability of doing it, I'm sure, because with the weaponry we had, let's say, in the early 80s, we could have wiped out half of the Japanese fleet in a twinkling of an eye, and certainly all the aircraft they had in the air. But the problem was this: if you were to do this and alter history that radically, what happens to future generations? What happens to the real history? In the movie, the civilian observer who was along argued with the captain and says quite literally, do you want to play God and take responsibility for future generations? Well, before he had the opportunity to say yes or no, in the movie, of course, the natural phenomena caught up with the fleet of aircraft already launched, and they all had to be pulled back to the carrier. And, of course, they returned to the current history time in terms of the movie. In reality, so far as I understand, he chickened out and refused to launch the waves of aircraft to destroy the Japanese fleet and the Japanese aircraft, and allowed history to take its normal course, returned to the present time, or the present time from which he had then emerged, and took whatever beating he took from the Navy brass for refusing to carry out a project. Now, we cannot prove that that is what actually happened, but we have reason to believe that is what happened, because we know they have this kind of hardware today. I have a friend who I've lost contact with, but who was on the Nimitz and found the hardware and was given a threat: either you join us and become part of this project, or it's deep six for you. He later found his way off the carrier by feigning insanity, threatening the life of the captain, of course, and all of this. So they gave him a Section 8. First thing to do, of course, was not the Section 8 dismissal, but they quickly got a helicopter on board that carrier, took him to the Naval Hospital in San Diego, allowed him to recover. And he slowly recovered. Of course, he wasn't mentally ill at all. This was a complete feigning of the whole situation in order to get himself out of the Navy. And it was successful. Instead of getting a Section 8 discharge, the captain tore up the papers and says, you're coming out with an honorable discharge. Now, you might ask why. It's a very simple answer. If he had had a Section 8 discharge, he could go to a congressman and a senator and says, look, this is what happened, and I'll tell you why. If he then went with an honorable discharge to a senator or a representative and tried to tell the story, they'd laugh at him. The captain knew what he was doing. As far as I know, they actually did do this, and they do have the capability of becoming invisible and perhaps traveling in time, but this, of course, requires heavy hardware, and only the supercarriers have enough power capability with the nuclear generators they have on board to do this. Well, as Vladimir was suggesting, getting back to the nuclear weapon problems, we do have some aspects here which are unsolved and unresolved, and it's quite possible that one of the problems involved with the hydrogen bomb and related weapons of that caliber is that every test that has been conducted, too, by the United States, they said they would never do another one again because of the consequences of the 54 test. They had a 56 one scheduled, and it was abandoned. The Russians had one nuclear test with a hydrogen bomb. That yielded an energy output far in excess of what was planned, and it caused even then the chairman, Mr. Khrushchev, to panic because the yield was in excess of 100 megatons, and they planned for 30. The Chinese have had one hydrogen bomb test, and I don't know whether they plan anymore. I believe the French have had one, and they've all said they will never, essentially, never more. The forces are released are so enormous that they don't really understand them, and they don't understand fully how to control it. A very well-known nuclear physicist by the name of Dr. Elizabeth Rauscher, who has been routed out of the establishment because she spoke openly at UC Berkeley about things like remote viewing being carried on at SRI and her ideas about nuclear energy. She has 125 papers published in the field of nuclear energy, the first one at the age of 16. And she has said very bluntly, and looking at it in terms of mathematics, she's writing her own mathematics now. She says they don't know what the blazes they're doing with the nuclear energies, and the nuclear scientists have not the foggiest notion of what's going on. And that's a nuclear physicist saying this. So we have problems here, and I think you will find, among other things, the trend now towards abandonment of nuclear weapons is for many reasons. One, they don't really know how to control them. Secondly, the waste problem is enormous because these weapons have to have the warheads replaced every 10 years because they go soft and go sour and cannot be used. And of course, this material can be recycled. It is in Europe, it is not in the U.S. They create an enormous waste problem. 90% of the waste is military, not from the nuclear power plants. And that waste problem is now overwhelming us, and everybody knows it. And the Russians have their problems. They had one nuclear waste site blow up in 1947 that devastated an area of 100,000 square miles, wiped out a city. And after 20 years, the vegetation is starting to grow back, and some areas are still so hot they won't let anybody in them 20 years later.
I would like here to make a little summary. I've heard not only from Al, but from other people the phrase that the scientists don't know what they're doing, especially with nuclear weapons, with other advanced weaponry. That Russian hydrogen bomb that caused a major earthquake and bent the needles of the seismographs almost the world over. There was a danger of the first hydrogen bomb setting the seawater on fire and basically exploding the planet. According to some alien revelations, this planet has been several times on the verge of being exploded by these runaway nuclear explosions. They say they test nuclear weapons underground in the Nevada test range. God knows what they're testing. They are long beyond 5th, 6th, 10th generation of nuclear weapons. They test such bizarre explosive technologies there. Not only nuclear explosions, but all these experiments with time, poking holes in the time just for the fun to see how the universe works. Manipulation of the weather. I mean, this is a whole different line of research. Weather manipulation through the Reichian technology for warfare. Earthquake manipulation. I mean, all these are technologies that the government, the Russians and the Americans have for, if not half a century, then for 30, for 40 years. The Russians can cause an earthquake at a distance. It's a dial quake. You just dial on the computer the magnitude and the epicenter of the quake, and you press the button, and the Tesla howitzer sends a hyperspace wave that condenses and solidifies and creates an explosion at any point of the globe you want. But let's try to come back to the topic of our discussion today. I mean, not only the party line versus the government line, but let's see the Luciferian line versus the Trinitarian line on this planet. I have a feeling, I mean, in analogy to the American drug companies testing dangerous and unproven drugs into the third world countries. In a similar way, many alien races are trying out their dangerous technologies on our planet. I mean, they're smart cookies. They're not dumb enough to try these time rippling Philadelphia stuff on their planet. Not only that, but above the material aliens, then we have the super material celestial beings with their hierarchy. What would the Luciferian hierarchy profit from all these endless experiments? Well, Lucifer is in the business of outperforming the Creator. With all these, I mean, on and on, one would hear that few of the engineers, few of the scientists, few of the military really know what the project is about. Usually, we would be given a project, but there are 2 or 3 other secret projects piggyback on top of the civilian or innocent-looking, even a secret project. Many times the Luciferian empire would be trying to understand major riddles, major secrets of the universe, in order for them later on to poke their spokes into the wheels of the Trinitarian cart, in order to be better able to manipulate the universe of space and time around them. There is a very interesting photograph here that is a material proof of an alien civilization, of an ancient terrestrial civilization that was way more advanced than we are today. And here Anthony would explain how he found this photograph.
This thing came to me courtesy of John Lear. I was up at his place in Las Vegas, and he showed me this huge metal piece that came up, as I understood it, out of the ground. The DOE goes over the country, and it's right in the center here. This is some 60 feet high and about 45 feet across, and it has what Vladimir calls as some sort of coolers. And the DOE in their planes discovered this huge magnetic field underneath them, and they went to investigate. This is either in, I think it's in northern Utah or southern Idaho, and they sent a drill down, and the drill broke when it hit this huge hunk of metal. They sent down a diamond drill, and the diamond drill broke. They dug a hole, and there were 6 of these things down there. They brought up 2. You can barely see a crane over here at the side. And it's, you know, an enormous, one of these enormous cranes. They have 2 girders strapped to it, and it's resting on a large chunk of sand there to hold, and it's got steel cables holding the thing up. And I found it absolutely fascinating, and I don't know how many thousands of years it's been down there. But Vladimir, I wanted Vladimir to explain specifically what it is, and after the lecture you can come up and take a look at it.
I saw this photograph from much larger, they were about half this page in size. And I spent about an hour very carefully looking. There were 3 photographs from different angles. My feeling, I mean, these are 3 stories tall. This is a one-piece equipment. No, I measured the height. It's about 3 stories tall, because a human being is as tall as about, anyway, but still it's a monstrous piece of equipment. But the very nature of it, it looks like an advanced tokamak type magnetic confinement device that would be used for advanced nuclear fusion experiments. It is made of 2 electric magnets, basically a donut electric magnet is folded in half, and then you have a horseshoe. Then you have 2 of these identical horseshoes joined like this, and with several supports here to keep them in place. So you end up with a very good magnetic confinement bottle for advanced plasma fusion, or God knows what other experiments. This comes from underground. It has been underground for nobody knows how many years. This is definitely a remnant from a very advanced past civilization. And there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of other remnants by past civilizations unearthed by the government that they would never reveal to us.
That brings a diamond drill does not mean tooling. It's a device that's based on something that we can have effect. And it's not even working with a tokamak. Way beyond that level, when you do access to utilization, it's something way beyond